Welcome, everybody. I'm Mary Abbott with the Friends of the Sierra Nevada Field Campus. I hope you enjoyed the slideshow this morning, got us kind of ready to talk about flowers and plants. Who are the Friends of the Sierra Nevada Field Campus? We're a small group of people that came together about 4 years ago to support a beloved program of San Francisco State University. And we're supporting them by doing these Zooms, keeping us connected to the field campus, continuing to raise funds. And we do a lot of advocacy at the university to keep progress rolling and keep us in touch with what's happening at the university. So what is the Sierra Nevada Field Campus? We're going to kind of go backwards here. It's a program of San Francisco State University through the College of Science and Engineering, and it's a field station. It's about 11 acres, and we offer classes in some college credit classes, and then lots of workshops in many different areas, but in a lot of ways they're overlapping. The sciences, which is the class we're talking about today, is the Flora of the Northern Sierra Nevada. That's a 4-credit college credit class. And there's about 6 other credit classes. And then we have many, many workshops. Some are art workshops, some are natural history, lots of birding, bird song. We even have fly fishing and the history of Sierra County and some new things hopefully are going to be happening in 2022, like geology and hiking. And one thing that lots of people signed up for before the pandemic hit was our summer camp for adults class. That was almost full, and people were really excited to get a whole smattering of things. So people come to the field campus and they have some choices about how they stay there. They can either bring their own tent and camp there next to the North Yuba River. Lots and lots of camping available. And meals are provided in the dining hall. We have really great food at the field campus. The campus also has platforms that they put tents on, and most of them have mattresses inside of them. So glamping is an option. And the third option is to stay off campus, either camping or there's lots of accommodations in the area. The area, where is it located? In case you're not familiar, if you go up Highway 80 to Truckee, you would have to cross over to Highway 49, go over the Yuba Pass, and then you would get to the field campus just outside of Bassett Station. Or you can come up Highway 49, go through Nevada City, through Downeyville. It's about 20 miles past Downeyville. And one of the really neat things that happens, and please chime in, Laura, I see Lori's in the room, and Tanya, and I'm sure there's lots of you who have already been there, but there's this kind of cross-pollination that happens. You might take Tanya's class in Flora, but at the same time, Lori Wiggum is teaching a rockwood water sky painting class. And we get to talk to each other at meals, and we get to see each other's work, and you can sit in on other people's lectures, or maybe there's a birdsong class going on, and they're having a lecture before dinner. Well, that might have been your rest time, but you have a chance to learn a lot about the birds of the area, and you're just there for taking a different class. So, one of the reasons that we do the Zooms is to raise money. And hi, Lori Wiggum. She's in the room here with us. She gave a presentation last Saturday on how to make a tree portrait using sticks. And during that presentation, we had a donor come forward and offer us a match of $10,000. So we have all summer to meet the match. So what you have donated towards this presentation, your amount will be doubled. So keep that in mind if you feel like making another donation, or if you were planning on making a donation this year. Dollar for dollar will be 2 for 1. So, and I'll tell you a little more later about what we're actually raising funds for. So with that, Tanya, have I forgotten anything? Oh, questions in the chat. Maybe let us know where you're coming from in the chat. What brought you to the field campus if you have been there before. And later on, I'll be posting a bunch of links for you to get more information about the Friends of the Sierra Nevada Field Campus and the field campus itself. We have a Facebook page and a YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff. So I'll post that in the chat. You can copy it and paste it into a Word doc, lots of links, and also how to contact Tanya through her website. Okay, if I haven't forgotten anything, I always forget something, but I will mute myself and let you start your presentation, Tanya.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming, Mary, and doing all this hard work. I think I'd like to really take a note, time to recognize that Mary has been very involved in a lot of work here with the field campus. She's a bit of the behind the scenes, if you will, and we're really fortunate to have someone like her, especially during the pandemic, to keep this sort of morale going. And so I just want to put a real shout out for you. And also, I was out at the field campus, as Mary may or may not have mentioned, is that I am right up here in Calpine. So the field campus actually looks really nice. There's a lot of lupin that are starting to come back in, considering that we have a lot fewer students and traffic on the field campus. So we're gonna hopefully not let you see my, let's hold off on that for a sec. I'll wait until I can get that up. But we're gonna be kind of diving into the field campus in a different way. And my hope today is to give you a virtual experience. And the idea is that we have, you know, some opportunities with Zoom to create a different, you know, virtual reality. And I'm gonna see how that goes today. This is gonna be exciting. So as that's warming up and getting it loaded properly, I want to talk a little bit about how I came to the field campus. Mary may have mentioned I'm a former student with Bob Patterson, who had ran the Sierra Botany course. And it's a accredited 5-unit course that, or excuse me, there's a 5-unit course that happens in the spring, and it covers about 50 plant families. So a lot of the students that we get from the university are coming from the fresh from that sort of experience. So the course tends to be a little heavy on the taxonomy, and there's good reason for that. And some years we've been able to do one more geared towards the public and another one more for hardcore taxonomists. But more or less, I keep it the same. That is sort of my style. So I really appreciate that Bob left a wonderful you know, legacy, and look forward to being able to meet you guys a little bit more and share your enthusiasm as well that you've experienced in that sense. So so also I wanted to acknowledge some aspects about the area that we're talking about. You know, as we're familiar with us as our Western sort of nomenclature and names that we're going to be giving a lot of these plants. You know, the Madu have actually had a much more significant connection to plants. And so we're using these sort of terms on our basis. And we also have some more information with genetics that has been playing a role in terms of how the relationships are with plants. So I do want to give credit for that. Oh, wrong. Okay. So sorry, that was not what I wanted. Let's see what we can do here. Give me a sec. I love technology. I hope you do too. So the field campus is a special place in the sense that we can. Are we? By the way, can you guys see it? I want to just double check to see if
No, you stopped sharing. So start your share again, Tanya.
okay, right. Okay. All right. So let's see how this works. And everyone close your eyes real quick. Because, all right. So we're going to have to share.
We did see your screen and now we don't.
Okay.
While we're waiting, I want to say hello to a couple people. Kathy Kevel is in the room, and she teaches the edible and medicinal plants class. So, hi, Kathy. And Stephen Kulicki is here. He's also on the board of the Friends of the Sierra Nevada Field Campus. Hi, Steve. He's in Sierra City, but I thought your power was out. You're back. Good. Good. All right. How are we doing, Tanya?
Just about there. And let's see what we have. It's not giving me the option to see the PowerPoint, so I'm working on that right now.
Okay. Rehearse as we might, at the last minute things change, and you know.
Not sure what happened. Okay, so it's loading up as we speak. The other thing I wanted to note about the Sierra Nevada Field Campus is what's going on right now. You know, we're currently in a drought, and the Forest Service has actually been very active in the area in terms of closing down some of the campgrounds. And this has been kind of interesting for us because we only have you know, so much access, and also a number of people are more eager to be out here than they have been before. So that is going to be a interesting feature when we get going in 2022. This is not good. I really appreciate your patience as we work through this technical glitch.
It seems inevitable, doesn't it? If you've been to the field campus, feel free to put into the chat which classes you've taken or what brought you there. We just had somebody comment that he took the birdsong recording workshop by Greg Budney, one of our instructors who used to be with Cornell University, and they would basically take over the field campus for a week or 10 days every spring, early in the season. It was pretty exciting because people from all over the world they will come to that recording workshop because Greg Budney is known internationally, as well as some of the other people that work with him. Come to our very little Sierra Nevada Field Campus. People from South America and France, all over the world.
Yeah.
Some of the other 4-credit classes are astronomy, the fungi of the Northern Sierra Nevada is the first class of the season. And actually, the instructor, Brian Perry, will be doing a Zoom for us on July 8th. It's a Thursday evening. And I love his presentations because you get to see the fungi under his microscope and just some of the amazing stories of the fascinating fungi of the Northern Sierra. We have an insect class. There's a butterflies and moths class, which is led by Paul Oppler and David Dropper and Aphie Buckler. Paul Oppler is a world-renowned expert in butterflies. These are the kind of people that the field campus attracts. We have a bat class. Can you imagine? Can spend an entire week studying bats. How are we doing, Tanya?
Pretty good. All right. I think we're on board.
Okay.
Right. And we're back.
Yes, we see your screen. All right.
So Mary touched on a number of the other courses, and I think that's really important as we're on the campus itself. A lot of those lectures are going to be going on in the evenings, and I have been excited to be there when the BAT group has been out with their sound equipment late at night and have lots to share. So to continue on where I left off, where we now know where the field campus is located, the course that I focus on is really field-based, as well as also a portion in the classroom. Here's an example of some of the activities we have. That center photo there, you can see that large manual. That's one of the books we use. It's called the Jepson Manual, and this is a wonderful book. Unfortunately, a lot of it's online. However, the field campus lends itself to a lot more in-depth connection to nature. And so in a world where we have a lot of technology and we have a lot more tools at our hands to be able to connect with the natural world and learn very quickly, I find that our way of remembering some of the taxonomic features is actually really getting into the book, working with a hand lens and going through the dissecting scopes. So that sort of practice is going to keep that information for the long term. So another beautiful feature here, if you can see on that right, that is Babbitt Peak. That's one of our locations to go see some flowers, such as the peonies that you may have or may not seen on the campus. And then we also have some guest lectures. Forest Service is nearby, and so we have some real-time activities for people. I generally teach with morning lectures with terminology, and then we go into the hikes in the afternoon, and I have some full day hikes as well. So this year I'm going to be, or excuse me, next year, well, technically, I will have a trees and shrubs course. And this course is going to be just for the abbreviated experience up in the field campus. And so, even though I'm having all these technology issues, the great thing is in the field, it all just works out great. And memorably, we've had experiences where the power has gone out and we've actually taken the classroom outdoors. So it's a lot easier when you're working with the natural world in a lot of ways too. So here's an example of some of the activities that we're going to be doing. That power outage I just described was right down there in that bottom right corner where we went up in the evening and we were practicing the keys. And this is an example of one of the keys that we work with, Silene. And the illustrations in the Jepson Manual are really helpful. And notably, I don't know if we've touched on it before, but the California Native Plant Society has actually made a couple of publications unique to the area, particularly in Plumas County. So we have some books that are been very helpful, and one of the authors, I believe, sometimes attends the field campus as well. So it's kind of exciting group to interact with. So for the course, because it's a week long, I typically focus on plant families, and I can go through about 8 or so in that time period. Some of these you may recognize yourself having been out to the field campus. And, this isn't necessarily an example of all of the plants that plant families I work with. The idea is that each year it's going to vary. Sometimes I will go in much lower elevation. There's the Plum Campground that is near the Pacific Crest Trail. And one year we had very late snow melt, and it turned out to be a really good spot for wildflowers. And then other years we're going to have an opportunity to get up to higher elevations like the Yuba Pass, as well as the Sierra Buttes. So we do have a range of habitats, and the hard thing is, in this virtual format is to be able to kind of visualize yourself there. I know that there's pine trees outside the door right here, but I want to invite you to kind of visualize yourself there. And so, so in this next part, I'm going to open up a video, and I'm going to just invite you to kind of close your eyes for a second. Imagine yourself inhaling the mountain pine air, and then you're going to get a chance to experience it. If I had the video, it should be right there. Okay, so we are having lots of fun today, and I can talk without it. It's actually quite fine. This is a map of the lakes basin. Long Lake, as you can see in that light blue in the center, is shows how it's nestled by all this really active geologic activity. And the interesting thing is it's a bit of an island, if you will. So we have the North Yuba River on to the north, of kind of in that teal color area, and then we also have the middle fork of the Feather River, which is that sort of brown area, if you will kind of get oriented geographically. And the idea is that there's this pre-Pleistocene activity that created and formed the peaks that we now know of as the Sierra Buttes. But geologically, it's a bit of an island. With that teal area on the left there, that is a marine sediment, and that sort of field is the field campus base. And then all the way going further to the middle fork, where we have serpentine, and then we also have large granite plutons that stick out. But the basin, the Gold Lakes Basin itself, is really special in the sense that these lakes have been created. And this is from periods of time of large glaciers thawing and then also freezing. And then there's also a number of rocks that have kind of intermixed in this process, getting moved around and shuffled. And in some places, you're maybe really familiar with it as moraines. And then what we often see too in the Gold Lakes Basin are these incredible waterfalls. And so some of you may be familiar with Fraser Falls. There's also some that are not too far from Long Lake. And the contrast of this sort of setting can be really quite stunning, as some of the photos have shown. Notably also, as you're going up to the Sierra Buttes, you're going to see some of that quartz porphyry. And this is kind of got that white and pink hue coloration that is in some of the slides. So take note, and when you're in these certain areas, because they lend us to some of these stunning arrays of rock gardens. And the flowers are a little bit geographically isolated in a lot of ways, lending us quite a bit of diversity. Okay. So my course, it's going to focus a lot on plant-insect interactions, at least for today's talk. Normally, I go over a lot of terminology. As you may or may not be familiar with plant taxonomy, there's a vocabulary that you learn. It's almost like learning a new language, if you will. And so I'm going to assume for the course of this talk that many of you know what a petal and a sepal is and some basic characteristics. But notably, what draws me and I'm very interested in are these sort of plant-insect interactions that have driven some of these corolla shapes. And we have some elaborate representations, more so than probably what we're familiar with in other parts of the state. They're very showy, they're very bright colored. And even if you go and sit down in a meadow, you can feel the hum of activity of insect life. so that you are very aware that there's been something happening here for a very long time in terms of these sort of interactions. So what I get really curious about is, where are they on that sort of spectrum of time? Because we have a different spectrum, but plants and insects are completely different in terms of how they've been evolving, and their interactions are very subtle. So one way we can look at it is this sort of evolutionary liable flow. Gene activity is very responsive to the pollination that's happening, and so they're responding in some ways that are allowing some varieties to appear, and hopefully we'll get to see some subspecies that start to distinguish themselves separately. There's a lot of work that goes into this in genetics these days currently, and fortunately we're at this time where we can learn very quickly about an entire genome of a genus, or even possibly a plant family, and maybe a couple of years. So it's moving quite rapidly. Here's just to give you an example of some of the families we're going to be focusing on. They do go by a lot of these morphological characteristics of the floral shape, the flower shapes. So right here we have in the center is an umbel, where this is a pedicel and a peduncles subtending each of these a flower. And then we also have a head, which is very similar to what we would see on an Asteraceae. Asteraceae is a great example of this. So the family I want to talk about is going to be the actual Plantaginaceae. So some of you may or may not be familiar with Scrofulariaceae. Way back in the day, this is also known as the figwort family. And it's been very, very active in terms of research currently. So it's an exciting time because we are learning a little bit more of like the truth. And interestingly, that we've been able to come this far with just characteristics that we see in our hand, or under a hand lens or a dissecting scope, to be able to distinguish these groups. So there's been a bit of a shuffle with the Scrofulariaceae, and there was about I think now we're currently with two, believe it or not, two genera in the entire state of California that are still left in Scrofulariaceae, and one of them being verbascum, which is an invasive plant. The other one's Scrofularia. So very interesting in that sense. The other plant families that have been distinguished are the Orobanchaceae and the Plantaginaceae and Primaceae. These three are the predominant ones, I would say, that we find in California. There are 7 families that are now recognized worldwide, which is a lot. And now that we're working through this sort of understanding of 275 genera that were priorly known as Scrofulariaceae, there's about 5,000 species as well that are getting resorted. It's a very large plant family, if you can imagine. And, it's been, a lot of this information is being extracted from chloroplast genes. And so the molecular evidence is starting to lend itself to give us this sort of new picture of relations to these other these groups. So that said, one of the challenging things that we will find with the plant taxonomy is that we can't necessarily go out in the field and say 4 petals, 4 sepals is a distincting characteristic for this plant family in this Scrofulariaceae. That said, there are some patterns that have emerged, and one of them is the Orobanchaceae. They tend to be these green hemiparasites that we know of, like Pedicularis, Caspilea, Orthocarpus, owls, plovers, Indian warriors. Those are really prolific in this family now. The family that is also active is Primaceae, which is now the monkey flower family. Many of you know the monkey flowers. And also we have Aranthranthi is the new genus that is emerging from that group. So I'm going to focus more on Plantaginaceae. Plantaginaceae is Veronicaceae, one of the older families. It is worldwide. It is found on every continent except Antarctica. And the pattern we see here with this one is there's 4 petals, sometimes 5, 4 petals sepals, and this is an example here that's gotten a little herbivory, but the lower lip, as you can see, is slightly fused, and the upper lip as well has two. So there's some variation in that. But we're going to focus more on penstemons because penstemons are one of the largest genera within the family. There's 282 species that are endemic just to North America, and this expands from Alaska all the way down to Guatemala. So it's a pretty large range just for penstemon, if you can kind of imagine that. And here we are in the Lakes Basin region with quite a number of species in and of itself. Kind of cool. South Utah, for example, has about 73 species of penstemon, which is sort of cool in the sense that, it's already rather isolated desert landscape. So, take note if you are a desert lover. It's kind of neat to explore a little bit more. Also, the penstemons are really cool. These group are known as the beard's tongues. They have a stamenoid. So there's the stamen, meaning the male part, and the stamenoid is sort of a facilitator in terms of pollination, is probably the best way to put it. They are, the beard's tongues are generally hairy in terms of the corolla, but typically also in this area of the stamenoids. The anthers, where they're very into the tip, have these open, they dehiss, and they allow the pollen to release out as if it was inside of a capsule. So it's not like it's just on the exterior of the very tip. And as well, the fruit can be very mucilaginous, like your flax seeds, if you ever get them wet. Very kind of cool. It helps them stay aggregated together in terms of when they need to germinate. The penstemons of the Grilled Lakes Basin. Well, there's so many that I could have chosen, and I decided to just focus on these four. And one of the reasons I was really interested in them in particular is a little bit of this pollination syndrome that's been occurring with them. They are, like I mentioned, they're evolutionary live oil. They're moving around a lot of gene flow, and they have demonstrated some adaptations to their pollinators in the time period in which we are presently here getting to observe it. So, if you can imagine, things are evolving on different time scales, but this is our opportunity to capture that. And it's a great example of that. And it's also a very attractive, showy plant. So here are a few that we're going to focus on. Down there in the bottom left, you can see that illustration with the stamenoids that I was talking about with the beard. Another defining characteristics are the anthers, the hiss, meaning that they open and they close. And then there's also the corolla tube itself. So the corolla can be shortened or it can be elongated. And it also has a lot to do with the visitor. Maybe it's a pollinator that has a longer proboscis, i.e. a tongue, such as a butterfly or a hummingbird. So that corolla tube is a little bit longer for them, and the nectar may or may not be more concentrated. That's very common with hummingbird type flowers that are frequently pollinated by them. So megachilids, which are the osmia, sort of the bees that we know of, sort of the metallic colors. Bees that we see buzzing around that are solitary. They're not quite like a honeybee in that sense. They particularly prefer a narrower opening in terms of the corolla shape. So you can see maybe this penstemon rydbergii might be a good example of that. They just kind of fit in there perfectly. They can kind of crawl in, and they don't need to have a long corolla. Typically the nectar in there is a little more dilute, if you will. So it's a little more watery, in other words. So that it doesn't have to have it can have numerous flowers, in other words, so that has plenty of opportunities for pollination. Another key characteristic is the platform. So, the thing with pollinators is they can see beyond the electromagnetic spectrum and the ultraviolet colors that we can't see. And there's some really cool examples of this. Linum, flax can do that as well. If you ever kind of catch the right light, you can see it in the sunlight. There also, people are very familiar with ranunculus buttercups have that sort of iridescence as well, that you can get a hint of it. But for us, for generally, unless you have what is that, infrared light that you can go in and actually see them, we can't see them to the naked eye. However, there's some other clues, like here in this penstemon decutus pediculatus. This right here, this is a kind of a landing pad, if you will. And who would need a landing pad? Probably something that's very small. And that is going to be a lot of our megacylids, our bees. And, notably the decutus, that Latin name is a kind of a clue a little bit about its habit. It tends to do very well after fires and disturbance. So the decutus is sort of a Latin term for that. The other names with the I at the end, right? Bergii, Newberii, these are named after taxonomists. We like to do that sometimes. So let's see, let's go on to the next one. If it'll let me. And get a little more in depth. So as I mentioned with the plant taxonomy course, we're going to be using something a little bit more like this hand lens. Hand lenses are a really good tool to have as any sort of field naturalist. This is a 10X, and it comes with a loop, must have a loop. And some of them have a pouch, you can keep them protected, and it can be your cool swag sort of jewelry that you wear. So the important thing that you want to do when you are out in the field using a hand lens is to know how to use it properly. And the idea is to have it pretty close up to your eye, and then also have the specimen very close as well. You'll get some practice, I'm sure, as you will, in the field campus. And then I want to make a real plug right here, because the field campus really does have an opportunity for us to dive more in depth with the dissecting scopes. And dissecting scopes are really a useful tool in us better understanding the plant, working through these keys and seeing these subtle characteristics. And so, what we're trying to do here at the field campus is really augment and support the lab setting for the students, so they have some really good resources for which they can access. And so keeping that in mind, that's one of the things that we're doing here with this this talk, is to highlight the value of that component. If you've all gotten a chance to experience the field campus's lab downstairs, we're hoping to get it a little bit more heated. So going back to the penstemon riebergii, you can see on the right there, I have dissected it so you can see the bearded tongue of which is known as the stamenoid. Stamenoids just means it's a sterile stamen, and it doesn't actually serve as a function other than that, probably to have pollination in terms of knocking the pollen to the pistil. Also, you can see here those U-shaped sacs. They look like a kind of a horseshoe. Those are going to be porocidal. They will open up and allow it. And then also those glandular hairiness. These are features that we're going to be looking at as taxonomists. Where is it glandular hairy? Is it glandular hairy throughout on the stem? Is it just on the calyx? Is it on the corolla? Where? Or is it not at all? And there's a lot of terminology that just focuses on that in and of itself. So we're all pretending that we're right now looking through hand lenses and dissecting scopes and appreciating these a little bit more. Here's that hot rock beard's tongue that I was talking about. The pediculatus refers to the pedicel, and there's a lot of varieties. So notably among the penstemon, there's a distinction between varieties and subspecies, and varieties are more of a taxonomic recognized differentiation. They are a little bit below a subspecies is the best way to put it. And they, they're very helpful in terms of like noting that there's some sort of characteristics that they're starting to differentiate. However, they will readily hybridize if they are co-occurring or near each other. Whereas with subspecies typically are a little bit more recognized on California CNDB, which is a California Natural Diversity database. And this this sort of classification is important in the sense that there's a geographic distinction that's separating it out within the species, and there's some characteristics that they will not actually interbreed. So just to clarify those two different things, we have a lot of actual varieties of Decutus in the Lakes Basin and also in North America. So Supratensis tends to have wider leaves. Here we just see the narrower leaves and the smaller corolla of the petal sedated. Here's a Penstemon heterodonax. If I had the video going, you get to see the bee going at it. You can see it's going in at the right at the mouth, and it doesn't have a very large opening. It just fits for the size of its body, and that's really important because it needs to be able to brush off anything that it's bringing in to the corolla. So notably, you can see on this bottom right image a little bit more of that bearding that is also just the hairs on the corolla as well to serve as a brush. And one of the adaptations that has been notable with some of these penstemons is the use of corolla color. And corolla color in this scenario, blues and purples are really common because they do attract the bees. However, there are some patterns that we do see that, like reds, tend to attract hummingbirds. And so some of this research that's been going on by Paul Wilson has been demonstrating in the greater geographic areas about how there's been a shift from the sort of bee pollinated, as you see here, towards more hummingbird corollas. Oh, there's our hot rock again. To the penstemons that have Penstemon newberrii being a good example of possibly more leaning towards hummingbird also pollination. And this is a pattern that he's looked at over the course of 40 or so species. And this sort of syndrome is starting to occur where there's typically copious dilute dilute nectar within the flowers, like what we saw in the Penstemon heterodonax. Also, in the Penstemon newberrii, there's probably a little bit more higher concentration of the nectar. And the stamen are far more exerted, if you will. They are sticking out beyond the corolla. And that is also more of a characteristic of hummingbird, or probably in this case, more of a butterfly type pollination. They are, they tend to have a narrower corolla. So just because the proboscis needs to fit inside, not the entire insect. So it's kind of a neat study that he's been doing for about 10 years working on this. And more and more evidence has been coming out alight. And hopefully we'll get a chance to see some of this, as it moves forward. But it's, this is sort of an inquiry for you to ask, get more familiar and become more curious about what makes these flowers what they are. And, I'm just hitting on one genus and some of its demonstrations of diversity. But if you can imagine, we have quite the spectrum out on, especially just within the Gold Lakes Basin and in the field campus area. And so, the idea is to ask these sort of questions. What are these drivers? What is influencing which? And it makes it a lot more exciting, for sure. So notably, there's been a proliferation of horticultural trade that has been taking advantage of the hybridization of penstemons. So you may get to see a lot more of them in your yard. And that's a good opportunity for you to take some observations there, because there are pollinators that are visiting regularly in our landscapes that we've modified, and develop that sort of inquiry. And that's really what I'm trying to encourage today, is just to be more observant, take note. What are you seeing that that makes you really interested in learning a little bit more. So, last thing I wanted to end with was a discussion about Osmia brevis. Brevis. Let's go back to that wonderful slide on the bee. So if you can imagine, this is a good example of a type of bee that uses the flower in a very creative way. I think I mentioned how the anthers tend to have these sacs that open up, and when there's no nectar, there's been some work done by James Kane that is noticing that they are frequently visited, and they will have a shiver their thorax to actually open up the anthers. So the sound will be reminiscent of a bumblebee coming in and visiting. And it's an adaptation that's becoming more of a new discovery among the megacylids. And, you may be able to hear that little high pitched sound the next time you go and sit next to a penstemon and listen to see if that osmia is doing that. So, well, I'm getting down to the last. I have like a little bit more to say about the Deciduous, but I'm going to save it. And we have, towards the end of my talk now. This was a picture of a sundew that we have in just north in the Feather River drainage. I focus a lot on the Gold Lakes Basin, but we do take field trips outside of the area only because we have some wonderful botanical locations that are highly concentrated with some rarities and unique uncommon plants that we will find in the area. And they are nicely protected. So I don't disclose all of the locations of them, but we are fortunate to be able to have access to them during the field course. So, and some of you have probably had an opportunity to see these. Great. So I want to welcome you to come back in 2022. We'll have more resources to be able to give you an experience on the field campus and walk around and take it all in yourself. So let's see. I think I'm gonna start to pass it back up to Mary here, and let's see if I can get this right.
We'd love to see your faces. Most people have their cameras hidden, and feel free to unmute. Well, we have a couple questions, Tanya. What do you recommend for hand lens, and where do you think a good place to get a good hand lens is?
Oh, good question. I've been getting mine from Carolina Biological, and they are a resource that's for a lot of labs type work, but also natural history as well. And mine's been pretty hardy. I think I've had this one for a good 15 years, so they last.
Yeah, I think Jack Law's website also carries hand lens and the close focus binoculars, which you probably don't use those, but for somebody like me who's kind of an amateur, I love my close focus binoculars. I don't have to bend over. It takes me right into the heart of the plant or whatever I'm looking at.
That's great. Yeah, I did not talk very much about tools at all, but
Yeah.
it's very helpful to have. Cameras do a lot these days, and so I use mine quite heavily, and I have some adapters that I put on mine, and
Uh-huh.
the macro lenses are really helpful. So, but I do up having to lean over to do that.
So, and you do most of the dissection work in the evening?
Yeah,
Uh,
I do. And here's an example of like, if you guys haven't seen, I'm sure you have, but a dissecting scope, maybe from your lab in biology. We worked with a stage that is lighted, and we don't have to do much else other than keep the specimens nice and fresh down in the lab.
yeah, and we have those at the field campus in the lab. And the lab is what we're working on remodeling. We're raising funds to remodel the lab because even though it's on the ground floor, it always has this feeling of being in the basement, which, or some have referred to it as the dungeon. But I know you like it to be cool down there because it keeps your plant material fresh. But we need new lighting, we need new windows. The whole space just needs to be kind of opened up and made a more pleasant place to be, and to have the option of heat. If we do have some classes that are down there early in the season and it's freezing, and they need heat down there. So little pitch to dig in and donate. There's the website right there, and I'll put all the links in the chat. Let's see. Amber, hi Amber. Amber Johnson is actually the where are you, Amber? Hi Amber. You can unmute if you want. She's acting interim director, kind of picking up where JR left off and bridging us between now and then. Right, Amber?
Hi, yes, thanks. This was really fun and interesting, and I'm so happy to be here. And my question for Tanya was, when is the best time of year to do this wildflower walk?
Yeah, so normally it would be this week that I'm here. June 21st to the 25th is when the course is set up, the third to fourth week. It has varied. We've had a year where it was rather cold, so sometimes it may need to be earlier in June or just right now.
Yeah, and we're hoping to then tack on after the week of the Flora class, tack on a weekend that just focuses on trees and shrubs, which was by popular demand. After the last time we were in session, everyone just didn't want the Flora course to end and felt like that was one of the things they wanted to learn more about. So Tanya created a trees and shrubs course that people could take independently or to just expand their week. So, and it'll probably be around that same week next year because that's part of the peak bloom time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have had, like we've mentioned that there's a range in elevation. So depending upon each year, I have an opportunity to scope out prior to get a sense of where's the best place to take people.
Mm-hmm. Grace is asking, is there a directory of botanists and geologists who are willing to be paid for guided hikes with private parties?
Ah. Question. I currently lead a walk for the International Bird Rescue, and I've also done some work for Point Reyes National Seashore, which is my home base in Marin County, and where I got a lot of my founding in botany. So, I will do it as a fundraiser. So if you want to get plugged in with that, I can help you with some ways in which you can support an organization as well. There aren't, as I understand, unless they are group walks, you can join a California Native Plant Society in your area, and there are typically walks there. That's a great opportunity to also meet other budding biologists and botanists. So I highly encourage that.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. Your local Native Plant Society will just have lots going on, and I know more chapters are having in-person walks now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's exciting. Well, does anybody have any more questions or comments? I put into the chat a whole bunch of different links. I hope you will copy it and paste it into a Word document. If you follow us on Facebook, follow the Friends of the Sierra Nevada Field Campus, it's a good place to get updates on maybe something that might be happening at the field campus, when registration for classes actually starts, which has been early January. Stephen Kulicki, who's here in the room, say hi, Steve. He's been doing the Monday monochrome on Facebook, these wonderful black and white images, because he lives in Sierra City. And then we have, of course, the Friday nature moment, where we all ask you to pause and think of the Lakes Basin, and it's an incredible place. Um, so thank you for coming. Please donate to the Friends. Help us make the lab a better place for Tanya and all the other instructors who use it. Lori Wiggum, who's here. And if there's no more questions, it looks like people are signing off. Maybe we should say goodbye.
Yeah, I just want to put a big plug out and thank you to Mary. For many of you that have been a participatory in the field campus and keep coming back each year, you know how integral she is, and being able to make sure that registration runs really smoothly, has been putting out the publications out way in advance, and has been just a huge support in so many ways, and sort of the glue, if you will, to creating this sort of experience. And so I just want to put a big shout out. Mary is doing this all
Thank
volunteer, as well as
Yeah.
other people that have been volunteering their time that are probably behind these screens. So I want to thank you. You really make the community what it is.
Thank you, Tanya. And I hope I see everybody on July 8th for the Fungi of the Northern Sierra Nevada. And if you get on the Facebook page, you'll get the link to register. Or you can go to this link that's on my screen and register now. I've got the link. It's live. You can register. That's going to be a wonderful Zoom. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Mary. Tanya, this was featured in both of our local papers, the Mountain Messenger and the Sierra Booster. So we're getting you in print, Tanya.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Exciting.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.